Hi, everybody. It's Couple Indemnity. We are a film podcast about the love of cinema by two very dedicated film fans. I'm Hal, and as ever, I'm joined by Izzy.
Hi everyone.
And joining us for his hat-trick appearance on the show is Scott. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Third time. Really? Am I the only guest that's been on this show,
As of
strangely?
yet, yes. Yeah, I've had some ideas and some planning. Now, this one was your selection,
It
wasn't it?
was.
Yeah, and this is a classic that we had actually watched together a few years back before we started Couple Indemnity. So we're doing A Matter of Life and Death, and it's our first Powell and Pressburger movie for Couple Indemnity. Go on, Iz, why did you choose this one for us to rewatch?
Okay, well, I first watched A Matter of Life and Death way back in film school at uni, as part of a like introduction to film history course. And this fell in kind of wartime Britain. It went week by week. And this actually was the same week that I watched the 39 Steps for the first time. And so they were kind of introduced as a double bill. And I always remembered just kind of I instantly fell in love with it. I think it was probably the first one on the course I loved and couldn't wait to show it to you a few years ago. It was one that because I knew you were, I can't remember which ones of the Archers you'd seen. You'd seen Colonel Blimp.
Yeah, I think I think a lot of my early film exposure as a teenager was like DVD box sets that my dad had bought me, and I think it was a double feature of this and Colonel Blimp, and those are when I was young the only early exposure I had to Powell and Pressburger. And in more recent years, since we've been watching movies, I've really covered all of their films in detail. And I think I'd seen Peeping Tom late at night one evening on TV, and since then I've come to it as well, and that's a whole world apart from what we're covering today, isn't it? Scott, your history with A Matter of Life and Death.
Well, firstly, I'm surprised this is your first Powell and Pressburger because what I know about you, Hal, is that you are an absolute fan of the Archer's work.
Hmm.
For me, my first watch is much closer to the original release date, I'm ashamed to say. Um, Back in the early 80s, I think there was a very sort of brief Powell and Pressburger season that BBC Two was showing, I think, on early evenings during the week. And the four that stood out for me, this was the first one, and they showed Black Narcissus, Colonel Blimp, and Canterbury Tale were the four. And when you watch all four of those in quite quick succession, you will find it difficult not to get an admiration and a love for the Powell and Pressburger canon because they are just incredible. This one stands out. This is the most famous, possibly apart from I'd say Black Narcissus, but oh sorry, Red Shoes even. But this one I think people remember. This one's probably their most accessible. This one I think tugs at the heartstrings. It's got a bit of everything. It's romance, it's drama, it's everything that you'd expect. The use of the black and white and the colour, all that stuff, which we will be talking about. I'm gonna guess, but for me, yeah, well, my early journey of discovering what a classic movie actually was, I was lucky to find this very early in that process, and it's stuck with me ever since. I mean, I've lost count the number of times I've seen this film. I could have got away with not watching it last night, but I thought, you know what?
Yeah.
Any excuse. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
It's a funny one why it's probably the most accessible, Powell and Pressburger. There is an element of maybe the context of the time it was released, maybe. But it could also be that it covers so many different moods and genres because it's escapism, isn't it?
I think it's significant the time it's released because this is 1946.
Yeah.
It's set immediately at the end of the war, isn't it? It's May 45, I think, is when his plane is shot down. But if you think in sort of 46, Britain isn't at war anymore, but it's still
Very
healing
much so.
at the moment. You know, there's,
Yeah.
yeah, losses everywhere still. You know, some of the families haven't come home from overseas. Lots of families have experienced loss of some kind. There's rationing, there's bomb sites everywhere. And, people are just haunted by that machinery of death. So, when you're given a story where somebody gives you a reason to live and, it's this magical fairy tale quality of it, but it also must have struck home the realism of the situation and what was going on at the time, I'm assuming.
I think there's so much to talk about here and so many different
Mm.
themes and things to take from it and reasons as to why it's so rewatchable for us. But let's get into the actual plot. So we'll take a quick break and here's the trailer.
Come in, Lancaster. Are you bailing out?
Yes, Jude, I'm bailing out, but there's a catch. I've got no parachute. What do you think the next world's like? I'll know soon enough anyway. I'm signing off now, Jude. Goodbye.
It's heaven, isn't it?
Peter couldn't have got away with it. He was due here half an hour after me. There's been a mistake.
When the records don't balance, all the alarm bells start ringing in the records office.
Oh, so there have been mistakes.
We'll explain your grave error to Squadron Leader Carter and ask him to follow you.
Oh, Peter, it was a cruel joke.
If it was on me. I've fallen in love because of your mistake. Well, if it's a respectable place, there must be a law of appeal. But this has never been done.
I call Squadron Leader Peter D. Carter. You claim you love her.
I do love her.
Would you die for her?
I would, but I'd rather live.
A Matter of Life and Death, released in December 1946, starring David Niven, Roger Livesey, Raymond Massey, and Kim Hunter. Produced, as we said, and directed by the wonderful Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger. Our synopsis. This is your choices, so I'll let you read this one.
A British wartime aviator, Peter Carter, jumps out of his damaged plane without a parachute and lands on a beach. He must appeal his case for the right to live in front of a celestial jury in the other world.
I had forgotten, I think this is like my third or fourth rewatch in total, but I'd forgotten about that opening narration before we get Peter Carter in the burning plane.
Very It's a Wonderful Life opening.
It is.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
Mm.
I think there are quite a few parallels with It's a Wonderful Life in a far more fantastical sense. This.
I think it establishes that very kind of those contemporary themes of the need to kind of unite and the kind of political themes very early on, because there's a very early hint. They mention that, oh, in that far off galaxy that's exploded or something. They're saying, oh, it's not a uranium atom or something like that. It's not our galaxy, thank goodness, or something like that. So it feels, a year after Hiroshima, like it feels very current to that.
I'd never made that connection until you mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah.
When we watched it.
I don't think I'd noticed it before. But that's why rewatching it is always valuable.
Yeah. The next scene is probably one of the most memorable kind of moments in the whole film, isn't it? And it's very much sets up everything we're dealing with here. Peter Carter in the plane, David Niven talking on the microphone, and he's not sure if anyone is able to hear him.
It's a magnificent opening, Hal, because it does everything at once. This film, it establishes the danger, right? The flames and the situation that Peter Carter's in. The romance is established within 30 seconds. We might have to talk about how quick this romance develops. You've got the wit, the charm, the educational quality that Peter Carter. I keep calling him Peter Niven for some reason. David Niven is very sort of well read. There's a lot of poetry comes out of him in this very extreme situation. But basically, there's just two voices in the dark. They don't see each other. And I think that Niven is perfect in this opening scene. The perfect gentleman. David Niven's one of my favourite actors. He always has been. But he gives this intelligence, this charm, this fatalism as well, because he knows he's going to die. But he doesn't want to go in an undignified manner. He's determined that even though there's some sort of element of terror here, he's going to just, I've got to go. I don't want to go in pain. He decides he's going to jump rather than go up in flames. And throughout it all, he's flirting, which is amazing, like this opening sequence.
Yeah. Kim Hunter's fascinating to watch as well, with the kind of shadow across her face, with the way that the camera lights her. But it's fascinating to watch her on a rewatch. You think, is she really falling in love with him over the microphone because she feels so helpless? Or is it because of his like wonderful charm in his kind of flirting?
I think their
Um,
romance is really built on the on that sense of kind of fleeting on the edge of is it all going to end very quickly? It's kind of like that, I don't know, end of life burning passion moment, isn't it? That's why it happens so quickly.
Absolutely.
yeah, she's got a clear head throughout this, and at the same time, she's tender, but she's not helpless
Mm.
throughout this whole 5 minute opening sequence. And I think is an inspired choice for the role of June. The thing that makes the leap natural for me from her just being a radio operator to the two of them falling in love over the airwaves is the fact that she listens and she does it beautifully. You know, she's just taking in what he's saying, she's understanding the situation. But then there's this heartfelt admiration for this man that she's never seen, that she's never going to see, potentially.
Mm.
And her ability to listen for me is almost as heroic as David Niven's actions in this opening
Mm.
sequence. You know, it's a perfect match, perfect match.
It's very tender, but it's very powerful at the same time. And then we move on to him washing up ashore on this beach. Again, coming back to it on a rewatch, the color is very stark here, but it's very interesting. And there's all sorts of strange things going on the beach, like there's goats around and a young kid, which I'd forgotten about.
That always takes me by surprise, by the way. Sorry that I had to look something up about this because I've watched this film 15 times or whatever. And that always surprised me. The naked boy on the beach with a load of goats. Okay. Apparently, this kid was uncredited for years and years and years. His name was not known until about 15, 20 years ago when somebody put on a forum online that, oh, the guy that played the kid on the beach is Peter Caldwell, I think his name is. And he lives next door to me. And he was just trying to find out more about him because, like, this kid was just brought. And there's a rumor, it's never been established, it's never been verified as to why he was naked. Apparently, I don't know how true this is, and there's a lot of sort of refuting of this claim. He turned up in a pair of shorts that were too contemporary for the
Yeah,
period or something. They were quite loud, probably Hawaiian shorts or something like that. So Powell made him take them
I
off.
assumed I think it could be that Peter Carter thinks he's almost like in heaven, and he's confused, and he thinks, do people wear clothes in heaven? You know?
Yeah, some sort of Greek sort of like
Cherub
nymph or
thing.
something. That was what, yeah, that's what I thought at first because he does think he's in heaven, doesn't he? Obviously,
And he's
as
playing the
he's walking
flute
across the
or
beach.
something, or
Mm,
Yeah.
like a whistle.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, is like some sort of pan-like creature or
Yeah.
something. You know? Mm.
And then we get the mosquito plane flyover overhead, and that I think is a great shot of Niven as he looks across, and that's kind of
Mm.
an awakening for him, and he realizes that he's not dead after all. And this is where we kind of get a shifting moment, and the first question I think internally with him as a character is posed, and then he sees across the way because he actually speaks to the kid, doesn't he?
He asks
He's
where
asking
he
about the
is.
airbase.
Mm.
Yeah,
And as if by magic, it is literally on the doorstep of where Kim Hunter is based.
exactly.
Literally.
And he had got a description from June about where she works and how far she lives from the airbase, and the fact that she cycles home and it takes about half an hour for each journey. And then he actually, as a quirk of fate, spots someone he thinks it might be, and he goes running across the beach in a very wonderful romantic embrace.
It is a bit sudden, isn't it?
Well, I think it's the realization in Kim Hunter that it's him.
And relief,
Relief,
I'm
yeah,
gonna sort of guess here as
And
well. Yeah.
disbelief, I think. There's the element of that. I think that the story behind the it's that picture at the end of World War II, isn't it, with the sailor and the nurse who are embracing in Times
Mm.
Square. That kind of that
Yeah.
war elicits maybe more heightened emotions than would be normally um expected.
yeah. I think there's definitely something to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get a new character, and then time stops repeatedly, doesn't it? In the next few scenes, I found this quite jarring, and this is the first real element of fantasy that we're bringing in here with Marius Goring playing the conductor.
Yeah. Do we meet Marius Goring up in heaven beforehand? He's having to explain himself as to having why he's missed David Niven, because we get the bit with Trubshaw in the waiting room waiting for him.
Yeah, so interlinked to this, which we skipped a bit, we have seen brief scenes up in
Mm,
heaven, but in this starkly contrasted
mm,
black and white.
It's like Peter's friends waiting, the one who was in the plane with him is
yeah.
waiting up in heaven, and he's
Yeah,
saying he can't have survived it, and how they've
They
kind of
never
missed
make a
him.
mistake. This almost like this government department, it's run so efficiently, never makes a mistake. You'll know if we made a mistake because the bells will ring and the alarms will go off. And
yeah,
again, I had to check on another fact here. You get an appearance by Richard Attenborough as one of the
yeah.
airmen. And I always thought that that was some sort of cameo. Let's just have pop Richard Attenborough in here as a, star of the moment. He was
I had no memory of any
no,
dialogue with
he does say a
Attenborough
couple of
at all.
words, obviously, but
He
at
does,
this
yeah,
point in his career, he wasn't famous. Brighton Rock is still a couple of years away. He's only made about 4 movies
Mm.
prior to this. So I'd always assumed that was
exactly.
like, yes, let's put Richard Attenborough in there because he's a famous face. But he wasn't. He was just a jobbing actor at this time. But it's
There's
mm,
so many
mm,
cameos, isn't there, in the
yeah,
heaven scenes?
But I
Um,
think that that scene with the huge amount of soldiers that are coming through the door as they're being processed, and there's that great shot, isn't there, with all the wings lined up in rows as they're like on a conveyor belt. Um, I think that whole kind of sequence is so important given the whole context of the film, because I think death is handled in this film in a very sensitive but non kind of
yeah,
religious way.
yeah,
And I think it's very comforting the way that it approaches. Like there's nothing distressing. It's very like the acceptance of it. There's kind of a cold. I think the American soldiers all go and get a cold bottle of Coke or
Coke.
yes.
something. Um, and it's very kind of quite cheerful,
Yeah, there's
really.
no reference to the word heaven from what I can remember, and there's no godlike entity overseeing everything.
I think Richard Attenborough is the only one who says something like it's heaven, but that's when he's referring to
He's
something
looking
he
down, isn't
sees.
he, at the something or through the circles, the circles that are looking down.
That's where the
Yeah, and
filing
and he's
Yeah,
looking
is.
down, and it really sort of highlights the differences between the US and the UK in their attitude. Like you say, Izzy, when they go and get the bottles of Coke from the vending machine, but then Richard Attenborough is always polite and he goes and signs in and he takes his wings and he goes through the process. The Americans just come so because I think Trubshaw looks up when the Americans come through the door. And where all the British soldiers are all neatly, buttoned up and ties done up and hats on straight, the Americans come in with their caps askew and scarves hanging all over them, and he
yeah.
gives them a real look of disgust as they come bundling through, sort of tuts under his breath.
I think these early scenes are a good way of subtly portraying the writer's way of wanting to show the cultural differences between the UK and the US
It's the
soldiers
theme that runs through
here.
it, isn't it? And it's the point of the trial at the end as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
Mm.
they
absolutely. And in this point of the film, it's very
mm,
respectful, isn't it? And it's very, we don't go into the kind of historical stereotypes or figures from history, but which we're going to get later on. But it's a very subtle way of showing it early on here with some of these cameos. But yeah, I mean, some of these early scenes with Marius Goring down on Earth when he's stopping time and interrupting the romance between Peter and June. Yeah, there's some ones that had always stuck in my memory. The one where they're laying down in
Some sort of
the
like
flower
mm,
bed.
forest bush
Yeah,
thing.
the color had always stuck in my mind. Like I mentioned earlier, these wonderful Technicolor films of the period. The flowers are always the thing that bring out the colors in in the camera lens so
Mm.
well. We mentioned that I think when we did Vertigo.
it's all down to Jack Cardiff, isn't it? Jack Cardiff's the cinematographer on this, so
Of
it's
course.
going to be something special, isn't it? And it's all in Technicolor, and just having the monochrome and the Technicolor just highlights the Technicolor more. Same with the Wizard of Oz, wasn't it? This is in reverse.
Scott, I wonder what you thought about the smell that he has every time that he meets the
Is
conductor.
is that supposed to be offensive to the French that it's fried
I
onions?
feel like it's a bit of a stereotypical dig.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. Fried onions. I think
Yeah,
if they wanted it to be offensive, I think they would just say onions.
onions or camembert or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, fried onions because there's that wonderful scene where he wakes up in the library, and that's the first thing he notices. It's the smell that wakes him
He's like,
up, isn't it? Yeah, deeply offensive.
but he says it's a nice smell. He does say
He
he
does,
likes it.
yeah, yeah. He's not upset by it. I love Mary's scoring. Sorry, I just want to say Mary's scoring in this. I mean, he comes across as he's an official, isn't he? He's working like if you treat Heaven as this government department that's very well run, he's one of those bureaucrats that's been charged to do the dirty work. And this obviously doesn't happen very often. These mistakes
Mm.
get made because, that's been made quite clearly at the beginning that Heaven doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And it's quite nice the way he does it, the way he tries to charm Niven and tell him, look, we made a mistake, it's our fault, but look, we've given you 20 hours. Um, and his argument doesn't stick because Niven being so educated and like, well, hang on a minute, it's your mistake, and this is brilliant the way it all leads up to the trial. And then when we get to see Roger Livesey later as well, how educated he is with the argument that a mistake's a mistake at the end of the day, but not his fault. And I love the way Maris Goring tries to just be this little official that's trying to drag David Niven back with him. Mm.
He's a real dandy, isn't he?
Yeah.
I wouldn't use the word camp, but he's very because he's got a face that was used very much in Powell and Pressburger's earlier films.
Mm.
In some of their more threatening, menacing espionage spy
Yeah.
movies, because he does have a very serious look about him, but he's very much used in this kind of harmless, angel-like dandy way here. Um,
I think that's quite important because at this point the film could get quite heavy at this
yeah,
point.
yeah.
So you need someone with a bit of bit of flair. Heaven needs
Mm.
an eccentric, and he is the perfect eccentric to be sent down just to lighten the tone of the film at this point. Yeah.
And I do wonder why they choose to make him clearly kind of a kind of a monarchist, because I guess the suggestion is that during the French Revolution he was guillotined. Is
Yeah.
that what they're suggesting? So he's kind of the opposite of the American um the prosecution later in the film. If he represents kind of being a monarchist and supportive of the monarchy, because that's why I'm guessing French Revolution he's beheaded, because he says he lost his head.
Yeah. But at the same time, he's sort of offended by English bad weather and fog and,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
You get a lot of funny, and sometimes the script it kind of verges a bit more into the comedy realm, doesn't it? And
It
it
needs
does
it.
it
Mm,
does need it, and it
mm.
keeps everything light and not too heavy. And sometimes even Niven's performance on a physical level, especially as it goes on, I think sometimes verges into the kind of not so much slapstick, but definitely a light touch of comedy that is sprinkled throughout.
But again, tying into the time period it's released, like it deals a lot with Britain's relationship with other countries, both historically and at the time. So it's always got these like little digs and things between like France and Britain, or or UK and USA. So that runs throughout the film, especially at the end. But there is, as you said, hinted at in the beginning.
Or in itself, that's what could be a very sensitive topic, given the kind of the slight natural resentment the British had to the Americans due to their delay involvement in the war.
Mm.
This film was conceived a couple of years previously to highlight that, and it wasn't conceived as a fantasy from what I read originally. But Powell and Pressburger took it and thought, you know what, we can make something out of this,
Mm.
because, as you say, the relationship between the two nations was a bit prickly at the time. And it was designed not necessarily as a morale booster or to try and build bridges. There was something about it was specifically written and designed to highlight the differences. And as I say, Powell and Pressburger took an amazing twist on that idea and came up with this,
Mm.
which I think is absolutely fantastic. Well, we both, well, all three of us all love this film, don't we? So it's worked somewhere along the line. Talking about the colour, sorry, again, in the garden. And we were saying about the reversal of like the Wizard of Oz sequence
Mm.
where Oz is the colour and Kansas is in black and white. I think what's wonderful is Maris Goring's reaction to seeing colour and flowers and things like that, because where he's from is, like I say, like a bureaucratical department where everything is in order. There's filing systems, there's timings, and all that sort of stuff. But it's where the life is. I think that's what it is. Heaven is full of death, so it is going to be black and white. It's going to be a miserable place. There's a lot going on. There's wonderful sunsets. There's beaches. When you get Roger Livesey looking through that telescope later, the colour and the life of the village is not what is happening up in heaven. Heaven is just an orderly place where things happen on time.
And it's the exposure to nature, isn't it?
Exactly.
Then,
So he comes down, he sees the
yeah,
flowers, and it's just like,
yeah.
wow, I'm usually stuck behind a desk for the last 300 years or whatever it may be, and he's given an opportunity to see life.
I also think the black and white in heaven is possibly because they say, oh, everyone's the same up here, everyone is equal. So there's that kind of leveler as well. And the fact that it ties in with the themes of kind of justice in black and white.
Yeah. Should we talk about Roger Livesey?
Oh,
Let's.
let's.
Dr. Reeves comes into the picture. Now, I think that he had been an acquaintance of June, so she was obviously a friend or a previous patient. He's very early introduced to Peter and is fascinated by his history and what's happened to him and his medical condition. And he is very much, I'm not going to say he's the standout performer from this movie, because I don't think this is really a film about kind of overperforming. It's fascinating as we're delving into the medical case of this, and whether this is a real life medical condition or whether we're slipping back into the fantasy side of the story again, and how that kind of interlinks with Dr. Reeves as a medical man.
There's a real I found it interesting when Reeves is talking to the other, like the neurologist, about the surgery that he wants to perform. There seems to be an understanding between these two doctors. They're talking about the other world and the jury that's to take place. So there's a real kind of acceptance, even within science, that the afterlife exists. Like they seem to be in complete agreement with this. Like they've already encountered cases like this before. I found that an interesting kind of detail on Third Watch.
Well, I can't think of any other film or series or anything where anyone in the medical profession isn't shunning that idea.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a reluctant acceptance of it.
He could have been brought in merely as a sensible doctor to explain the fantasy away, but he's curious. And I think he becomes one of Powell and Pressburger's most appealing figures because of this, because he's slightly eccentric, but riding the motorcycle, he's got this, is it a camera obscura they call it, isn't it? This telescope thing that he's using to spy on the village. And he treats that with real curiosity, the same way as he treats Peter when he first meets him. He doesn't dismiss Peter's story. He actually has some of the answers, because he does ask him, do you smell anything? So he's obviously read something about a condition like this, possibly somewhere along the line. And he's a real decent soul as well. That's the main thing I got away from Livesey's performance. He is a decent soul that's not going to judge, and he doesn't judge at all throughout this. He accepts Peter's story and tries to help.
There's that weird scene as well when he first meets Peter, that's with the village production of A Midsummer Night's Dream being kind of staged or rehearsed in the background. And we were reading about it yesterday and saw that, was it Lois Maxwell?
Yes.
Makes her first ever film appearance.
She's in there, is she?
She's in that early scene with the staging.
I had no knowledge of that before this watch. Again, yeah, another one of the many cameos in it. So, I mean, what Reeves is saying is that he's obviously buying into this story about a heaven and the conductor, and he's saying that he calls him his client, that he was given the additional time on the earth. During that time, Peter's fallen in love, and that should take any kind of precedence over heaven's claim on him. And all this is happening, of course, when Peter is is due to be going in for brain surgery. So we're kind of getting these flashpoints across.
You also get one of the earliest shots of that fantastic staircase
Yes.
in this part, because doesn't the conductor try to trick him into going up to heaven
Yeah.
at some point? And because he's trying to choose his defense. So he's like, oh, you could have him or you could have him, as they're going up the stairs. I think that the staircase, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know. I think that's one of the most impressive technological points of this film.
I would say
And it was
probably
the massive escalator, I think, that they used.
I would say it's one of the most technical, astounding feats of any old film from the 40s, I would say. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's
it still stands up, doesn't it? You know, you don't look at that and go, "Oh, that's a bit clunky." That looks perfect for the era. Absolutely does.
it's so impressive and striking, and it's straight out of these like earlier films that Pressburger was part of in his own career as a screenwriter on like very movies that were much more like expressionistic, that was with directors like Fritz Lang.
Am I right in thinking the American title was Stairway to Heaven?
It was,
Yes.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, because the American market didn't want the word death
makes
in
sense.
it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So it's at this point when we are first going into the Celestial Court when we meet Raymond Massey, isn't it?
Yeah.
We pick up very early that he isn't a fan of the British, because he had been killed in
It was Lexington or something. He was the
Right.
first
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
They say he was the first man killed by a British bullet in the
That's it.
American Revolutionary War.
Yeah. And as we get the to and fro, Dr. Reeves is his opposition, and he is immediately kind of challenging the jury and who they are made up of as representatives, that they would be naturally prejudiced against the British.
Yeah, but they turn that against him, don't they? Eventually.
Yes, so the jury is replaced by this kind of. It's very interesting to watch now with 2026 eyes. We've got this kind of mix of modern Americans, but their origins are all from, you get Asian Americans, you get
Italian American.
yeah, you
Yeah,
do.
they get the New York Irish cop as
That's
well, I
right.
believe, was one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure Bona Coliano is one of them.
No, Bona Coliano's the airman that comes in and goes to the Coke machine at the beginning.
Yeah, but isn't he?
He's
Don't we see him
Yeah,
again?
he goes onto the jury, I think.
I think he goes on to
I was going to say, because he's in the audience,
Yes.
isn't he?
Yeah.
Because he's flirting with one of the nurses or something
Yeah.
across the aisle, isn't he? Yeah. Oh, does he become one of the
I think he
jury?
does, because
Yeah.
he's quite noticeable because of how kind of
Mm,
slim and tall he is.
yeah.
I'd forget, he was one of the only ones other than Dickie Attenborough that I'd remembered was part of the Heaven cameos.
Mhm.
Oh, well, no, you've got the nun out of Black Narcissus, haven't
Kathleen
you?
Byron.
Kathleen Byron's in it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, with an
She as well.
extraordinary haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recommended Izzy to get that haircut.
I can't make sense of that hairdo. It's like a halo around her head, but then it's all curly at the back, like a bowl of noodles or something. I can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I did find going through the cast last night, just checking a few details. Uncredited ARP warden, so obviously somebody down on Earth. Leslie Dwyer.
Yes, I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned that to Izzy last night, and I said, "Oh, this guy became an old man in Heidi High." Yeah, but I mean, he was in everything in this sort of
Yes.
late 40s, early 50s period. But again, we don't see him, do we? We can't. We're not able
No.
to pick him out.
And you don't hear this guy. Robert Reety is on the staircase at some point, and Robert Reety is the guy that had that spectacular voice, and he was the guy that did the voice of all the Bond villains in Connery's era.
Oh, really?
So he was like Largo's
Yeah.
voice and the earlier version of Blofeld in the earlier movies and things like that. And Robert Reety had a incredible acting career, but he's more recognisable for his voice, but you don't hear him speaking this at all.
Another one that I saw was, and we won't mention them later because they're just the cameos when we talk about the cast. But Frederick Volk is in there as well,
Yeah.
who plays the psychologist in Dead of Night, and often
Yeah.
like very typically plays Germans in this era.
Absolutely, yeah.
They decide to go down, don't they?
Hmm.
The whole jury ends up going down the staircase
That's right.
to
Yeah.
the scene with the where the surgery is taking place. Is that where we get this amazing? I still can't wrap my head around how they did this. The amazing shot of them coming through the door. We've got like Roger Livesey, um, David Niven. I don't know how they filmed this, where they're going through the door because they're ghosts.
Mm.
And they just pass right through it. I still don't understand how
Isn't
they
that
did
a bit
that.
earlier?
Maybe, but
Yeah.
it's in that
Yeah, that's an interesting scene because
surgery, isn't it?
you can quite clearly see poor old Kim Hunter's hand slightly moving, but
Oh, frozen.
she's there statuesque, and David Niven is he's like checking if she really is frozen in time. We eventually come to the moment where it's the final outcome, and Dr. Reeves gets Kim Hunter to take the stand, and he wants to find a way of June proving to the jury that love will kind of conquer all.
Mm.
So they realize, I think, that the only way to save Peter's life and to get the jury to believe him is for June to take his place.
Well, to like prove their love because they're saying that
Yeah.
there's not enough evidence. So she doesn't hesitate to say that she would trade her life for his. So she starts going up the staircase with them. And then they go, "Oh no, 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 no. It was a trick. We've tested you enough." And she runs back down.
Yeah. That leads obviously to one of the another one of those sort of cinematic shots that always stays in your memory, isn't it? Of Peter Carter and June kind of just embracing and looking over at the jury and the remaining heaven characters as the escalator goes back up again and makes its way back up to heaven.
There's the that Reeves line, nothing is stronger than the law in the universe, but on Earth, nothing is stronger than love. That kind of ties in with the color choices in the film, I think, because I was saying like law being the black and white, and then love being the in color, beauty, passion, all of that.
Life itself. Yeah.
There's lots of poetic quotes in this.
Well, he is a poet, isn't he?
Yeah.
Isn't Peter Carter's character meant to be a poet?
Yes, it is. Yeah. But even like other characters, like Reeves, come up with quotations that are very kind of memorable in that way.
And then something I hadn't really noticed before was the very ending with the choice of the surgeon and the casting of the surgeon. I hadn't noticed, I think maybe I did know, but I hadn't really noticed that before, that it's the same person who plays the judge.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you start questioning, okay, is this all in Peter's mind? Is it, a figment of his imagination? Did he bail out of the aeroplane and he's on the operating table because he was injured when he came out of the plane?
Little things like that do get you questioning a lot of this.
Yeah.
And I think not all of this in a kind of logical sense it doesn't all quite come together. But I think that's part of the beauty of this.
Or is it a metaphor for like his life was in his hands kind of thing?
You don't normally like movies like this, where you have some open questions by the end.
I think
You normally get frustrated by this.
It works for this one though.
I think it very much does.
Because it still has a kind of a happy ending where it feels resolved because he survives.
Izzy loves a happy
I
ending.
do love a happy ending. I think I've got better since I've been with you.
Yeah, you've had to, 'cause yeah, with more bleaker films we've watched and film noirs and things like that.
Still like a happy ending.
I think this could have been a very dark film if just certain elements of this were in any way different. You need the happy ending, obviously. It was going to be inevitable. There was going to be a happy ending to this. I was hoping, you hope there would be. Because it's dealing with a very dark subject. And as I say, the timing of it is just a miserable place to be.
It is. Yeah.
Post-war, and you think, well, you need entertainment that's going to lift the spirits. And, it does have its dark places because it talks about death throughout this movie. Literally, the whole 90 minutes is about death. But you still come away with a smile on your face and a skip in your step, almost. Yeah.
Yeah, you do. And I think Scorsese highlights this. I mean, you can find endless footage of him talking about Michael Powell's work. But he does kind of summarize it very well, this movie, in terms of the context and the era, the year that it was released. The focus of cinema was very much heavy on war films naturally. Film noir was really coming to it into its own in this period. So there was a lot of kind of bleak cinema out there and entertainment for the public. But that also meant there was a place for this type of film, for films that could deal with realistic subjects, but have that put that kind of philosophical slant on it. Like It's a Wonderful Life, I would put in the same category, for that same reason. You get that uplifting feeling by the end of it. And it's really that makes it so rewatchable and so accessible to everyone. Well, let's talk about some of the production about this because naturally it's fascinating. So filming took place at Denham Studios in Buckinghamshire between September to December 1945, using 29 sets and cost an estimated £320,000, which in today's money is about 15.5 million. The beach scene was shot at Saunton Sands in Devon, and the village seen in Dr. Reeves's camera lens was in Sheer in Surrey, in our neck of the woods.
Yep.
Yeah, which I didn't know before I came to do some notes for this movie. So it's interesting to see those brief shots.
Wonder if Shea still looks like that. Have you got
It
any idea?
doesn't.
It
Well, I was
doesn't.
trying to work it out because I think there's this one shot which is like looking down the high street where on the
Mm,
left now is like a cafe, but also a museum to the village.
mm.
So I'm wondering if maybe there is reference to this film because the film I know most that she is featured in is The Holiday. With Kate
Oh,
Winslet.
is that
That's
there?
Sheer.
Ah,
Um,
right.
so and Cameron Diaz like driving. Well, actually, that's Godalming, but yeah. So there's
Yeah,
that's where I know Sheer film
yeah.
wise the most from.
Ah, right.
So there's my link. All roads
Sheer
link
has a
back
lot
to The
of
Holiday.
wide-ranging cinema history. Absolutely. The technical side of the production understandably took up a lot of time. The huge escalator linking the different worlds was called Operation Ethel by the firm of engineers who constructed it. And they were actually employed by the London Transport Board, and it took 3 months for them to make it, costing £3,000. It had 106 steps. Each were 20 feet wide and was driven by a 12 horsepower engine. Casting wise, Marius Goring, who we mentioned before, played Conductor 71, and he'd been desperate to play the role of Peter. But he was told that if he turned down the role that he was offered, they would instead offer it to Peter Ustinov.
Oh, okay. One of my favourite bits of trivia about this, about the production of it, it's the scene after he bails out of the aircraft and he's walking along the beach and he's kicking his boots off and taking the parachute off or whatever, all the flight gear. And there's this hazy mist.
Yes,
You
I
read
read
this? Was
this.
it Jack Cardiff or Powell or somebody breathed on the lens
To
to fog
fog
it
it to
up?
make it
Oh,
Yeah, it
wow.
literally was that simple to get that effect. Yeah. Mm.
Amazing. Powell and Pressburger looked to Hollywood for the role of June, and a certain suggestion came from a Mr. Hitchcock for Kim Hunter, who had apparently read lines from behind the camera on a screen test for Ingrid Bergman
Oh.
on the set of
Hmm.
Spellbound, because she was under contract to David Selznick at the time.
To me, Kim Hunter has the most recognizable eyes in Hollywood because she was Zira in Planet of the Apes.
We were going to
Yeah,
mention,
so every time I see this film, I just look at the eyes because that is all you recognize from the makeup from that movie. Um,
it should have been a lot older by then as well.
yeah,
So,
68, I think that was made, so 20 years older,
yeah.
yeah. Mm.
So you're watching her in this film just thinking
Yeah, you
monkey.
do, well, not so much now, but when I first watched it, I didn't realize who she was, and then the name came up, and I'm going back, as I say, 40 odd years ago. I'm thinking Kim Hunter, as Hal knows, Planet of the Apes is one of my favourite films because one of my other podcasts is The Stinking Paws, which comes from the Planet of the
Yeah.
Apes. And that has always stuck with me. Even last night, I was just looking at Kim Hunter's eyes, thinking, monkey. Sorry.
Lining the escalator are huge statues of historically prominent men, and the lists of the names from the statue appear in Michael Powell's written notes from the original script, and they include Alexander the Great, Beethoven, Chopin, Confucius, Benjamin Franklin, Julius Caesar, Abraham Lincoln, Michelangelo, Muhammad, Moses, Plato, Rembrandt, Shakespeare, and Solomon. So I mean, there is a real respect there to the history side of it, and they wanted to integrate this in their concept of heaven,
You
didn't
think
they?
about the budget that went on creating those statues, but you don't
Yeah.
notice them specifically, do you? I think I spotted Mohammed and Abraham Lincoln and a couple of them, but
Plato, I think, was the scene where Niven and Marius Goring are going up the
yeah, yeah,
escalator themselves when David Niven then runs back down
yeah,
again.
Because he's saying, "Oh, do you want them to defend you? Do you want
that's
them
it.
to defend
But
you?"
the majority of those
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't notice. They're just figures
No,
in the
they
distance.
just go all the
Yeah,
way up.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of awards, the film was completely overlooked at the Oscars, sadly. This was before the BAFTAs began, and we tend to kind of focus usually on Oscars and BAFTAs and sometimes Golden Globes. So there's nothing to talk about in the awards section for this, which is a real shame, you know. But I think if you looked up the Best Picture awards of 1946, it would have been very star-studded and it would have had great competition anyway.
Well, I'm guessing this is before the category for kind of visual effects began, but this would have.
I don't know.
Special effects is very recent,
Probably.
very recent. Same as
Yeah.
makeup, they're very recent.
I think there would have been a production award, wouldn't there have been?
Yeah, maybe.
I think this was the first Royal Command movie, I believe, in 1946. Is that
Yes.
right
Yeah,
as well? I think it was the first one
I think
selected for
so.
well, it would have been the King then, wouldn't it, back then? Yeah. Mm.
Mm.
Well, let's talk about the cast. There's a lot of people to talk about here. So David Niven as Peter Carter, squadron leader. This is our first David Niven film for the podcast. So the first time we can dig into this wonderful, cherished actor from not just British history, but really Hollywood history. Because he was really a Hollywood star
Mm.
more than a British cinema star. One of your favorites, do you say, Scott?
Absolutely adore David Niven. This is his first movie, I think, after serving in the war, and he had a really successful Hollywood career up to that point.
Yeah,
So, bit of a gamble. What film do I choose immediately after coming back into civvy life? But obviously, a great choice. I mean, David Niven, the quintessential gentleman,
he is.
raconteur. I mean, the two finest Hollywood autobiographies ever written, Moon's a Balloon and Bring on the Empty Horses. They are so funny.
I've read Moon's a
Yeah.
Balloon. It's
And
wonderful. Yeah.
if you can find, they're all on YouTube, his interviews that he does with Michael Parkinson. He's one of
Yes.
these people like Ustinov that can just tell a story and he just captivates the audience. He will just get your
Mm.
attention without Parkinson even interrupting at all. And he's so
Exactly.
funny. The stories he tells because he knew everybody in Hollywood. He was big friends with Bogart and Bacall. They were his best mates.
And
They're all
Errol
of those
Flynn.
guys, and they're all
Yeah.
together, and all the
Yeah.
expats as well. They're
That's
out at
right.
Rathbone. He sort of hung back with Basil Rathbone and a lot of Nigel
Nigel
Bruce, all
Bruce.
those
Yeah.
guys. 'Cause it was that era in the 30s and the early 40s before he came over to Europe to fight, and then he just became this wonderful sort of elder statesman of British cinema as he matured great. Some actors don't have that longevity, but he did. I mean, he's in the first Pink Panther movie and he's superb in that, things like that. Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was just making notes on what we may cover again on the podcast with him in. I mean, the late 30s when he really became a star. Um, Prisoner of
Yeah.
Zenda, I think, which is Errol Flynn, but he was in one of the original Wuthering Heights films with
Mm.
Oh,
Olivier.
39. Yeah, that's one of his
Um,
earliest Hollywood movies. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and he did another film in the war, which I think is very underrated, but directed by Carol Reed, which is called The Way
Yeah.
Ahead, which is really like a typical Real Britannia
Oh,
film,
it's
I
all
think,
about
that would be
Spitfires and
covering.
yeah, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good. And then the Christmas movie with Cary Grant, The Bishop's
Yeah.
Wife, he was in the 50s. He really went into further stardom, but he broadened out into television. I remember reading as well in the autobiography. But then came big movies to compete with television, like Around the World in 80 Days,
Great film.
Guns of Navarone, and films like that. So big for what at the time would have been like the equivalent of
Yeah.
blockbusters, that really made a lot of money. But for me, yeah, my two favorites for him, that I've watched the most are the original Pink Panther, which we have to cover, and of course the madcap 60s Casino Royale, along with every other acting A-lister of the
Yeah.
time. So I can't wait to cover those. So let's talk about Roger Livesey as Dr. Reeves. I'll let Izzy lead on this one. Why did you like him so much?
It's his voice. He has a
It
fantastic
is his
voice.
voice.
And I think I don't know. It feels very much like as I don't know much about him as an actor, what he actually was like as a person, but it feels such a kind of can I want to say candid. There's something very honest about his performance. It feels almost like he's just himself on screen, which I know is probably not true, but it feels like that. There's nothing forced or um kind of over dramatic about it.
He's very engaging. I think he holds the camera so well, and I think you really bask in every moment with him on screen. And it's partly to do with his voice, but also partly because of how endearing his characters are as well. And you do get that as well with the other films he was in. He's very much the lead in Colonel Blimp for the most part, other
Mm.
than Anton Walbrook or Deborah Kerr. Because his character is the one who spans over time across the wars leading up to World War II. And it's a wonderful performance and one of my favorite of all time. And it's the reason why Colonel Blimp is my favorite Powell and Pressburger movie, his performance in that. But make no doubt about it, he has a wonderful supporting turn in this film. And it's a special appearance. And it's a shame his career, it's a shame. He didn't do a lot of movies in a short space of time. He did a very staggered, kind of sparse amount of movies in a long period of time, going into the 60s. So he didn't work a lot, but I think he chose his work very carefully. And then he did I Know Where I'm Going, which is the Powell and Pressburger movie set in
Mm.
Scotland with Wendy Hiller. And then again, two supporting appearances later on, which we may cover in 1960 in The League of Gentlemen and The
Yeah,
Entertainer.
we cover both of those in Real Britannia, and he's superb. He did a lot of stage work. That's why his movie career is quite sporadic, to be honest. But he's definitely worth watching for League of Gentlemen and The Entertainer. Not necessarily the standout in both of those movies, but he's definitely noticeable. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Well, next on the cast list is Raymond Massey as Abraham Farland. So not in many scenes. I think he's in about two extended scenes in the Celestial Court. And not an actor we've seen an awful lot of, but very interesting family history. And the fact he was Canadian and, first emerged in theatre and then British films from that silent to sound crossover era. He was also apparently in The Prisoner of Zenda and Things to Come in the 30s, and then went on to Arsenic and Old Lace in the 40s and movies like
Arsenic and
that.
Old Lace is superb, by the way, if you've not seen it. It is hilarious. It is a real screwball comedy, and they put makeup on him to look a little bit like Boris Karloff. And it's the running joke throughout the film because he plays a murderer. That the only description they've got of him is that he looks like Boris Karloff, and the only reason he looks like Boris Karloff is he's had some botched plastic surgery. It's Please watch this film, and I'll review it with you if you want me to, because it is just the ultimate in screwball comedies. It's
It's on the
so
list.
good. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
also in East of Eden, the James Dean movie as well.
Yeah, I've got that
Yeah,
down. Yeah, and he was in How the West Was Won. So some big films later on in his career. But I think he had a really strong look. Again, a bit like Marius Goring in a kind of different way. And Anna Massey certainly kind of inherited that strong feature look in her profile and her strong
yeah.
eyes as
Have
well.
you seen 49th Parallel by Michael Powell?
It's one of probably my most underrated
Yeah,
Powell and
because he's
Pressburger
in
films.
that.
It's my favorite early film that they
Yeah,
did
yeah,
together,
he's in that. Mm.
It's really good. Yeah, I should add it to the list for us to cover. Now it's Kim Hunter next on the list as June.
I don't know anything else apart
Fascinating.
from Planet of the Apes. I'm sorry, that's all I know.
Well, yeah, I mean, she definitely worked with Powell and Pressburger a fair bit. Her film debut was actually the horror film by Val Lewton, The Seventh Victim, which, if you've not seen that, is very memorable and very eerie. But yeah, Canterbury Tale she had a small role in, like a few other cast members did. But then she was actually blacklisted in the McCarthy period. So she had to really rely on stage work in that period after this. And she originally had the role of Stella on Streetcar Named Desire, that then led to her being cast in the movie that was in 51, opposite Brando. And that, for me, is a five-star film. And I can't
Yeah,
wait to show you that one.
yeah.
Mhm.
She's also in The Swimmer, 1968,
She is.
which again is a fantastic, very underseen movie with Burt Lancaster.
It's one of my favorites in the
Mm,
60s. And
yeah,
I've shown Izzy that. We've seen it before together, but we
yeah,
need to cover it for the podcast.
Who
yeah.
she is.
Well, there's a lot of
Betty.
female
I mean,
Mm.
it's constantly changing, isn't it,
that
that
it's
film?
it's the
Every
changing
every
in
garden. Yes.
the sequence of these older
She
females.
is a homeowner. She could be any of them. So
Well, next time we watch it, we'll definitely point Kim Hunter out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But Planet of the Apes, yeah,
Mhm.
that's I almost can feel a Scott recommendation coming along.
It's a shame that that is what most people know her for. I mean, I mean, she's superb as an ape. She's absolutely brilliant. But there was so much more to her.
So convincing.
Well, look, like you just said, we've already just mentioned The Swimmer, Streetcar Named Desire, and A Matter of Life and Death. You know, if they were the only three movies on her CV, she's done a good job. You
No,
know,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Next is Marius Goring as the conductor. Fascinating life this guy had. I always thought from his name and even from his look that he would have been German, but he was actually born in England. And then was a big like Shakespearean actor of the 30s. And then he actually toured France and Germany in that period, and then was able to speak fluently in both languages. And then in the war in 1941, he was appointed by the BBC as supervisor of productions broadcasting to Germany at the time.
Oh, okay.
because he
Which
was fluent in German.
because he was fluent in German and he could probably use his powerful voice to effect. And the Nazis had outlined him and put him on a hit list.
Uh,
So he must have probably put him in a difficult position in this period when he was making more war films. But he did The Spy in Black that was on the eve of World War II. He was also in The Red Shoes,
mm,
which you're going to have to cover, and one of Powell and Pressburger's last, or certainly later films, which was I'll Met by Moonlight, which was in 1957. So very interesting life. And lastly, in terms of actual casting members to talk about, Kathleen Byron, because it's her second appearance on the podcast. And this is a surprising one because this is obviously one of her early film appearances, but the one we've seen her in is a modern film, what we
Well,
might call a modern film.
another World War II film, but
Yes.
from a completely different context.
So Scott, she's in Saving Private Ryan.
She is the older Mrs. Ryan,
Yeah.
the wife of the Private Ryan
Yeah.
in the modern
When they're
day.
walking
Is
through
that
the-
right through the graveyard, through the cemetery?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so she's in
Yeah.
a brief scene as they're walking up to it at the beginning of Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah.
before the beach sequence,
Mm,
before that flashback,
yeah.
and then at the end again
When
it's-
he's crying
when
and
he's
she
crying.
can't get behind
That's
him.
it.
Yeah, that's her. So she lived to an old age. So yeah, technically it's her second appearance on the podcast. Um, and then of course honorable mentions for Bona Colliano.
Hmm.
Interesting life he had, wasn't it, Scott?
Wasn't he a circus performer or something originally? Or
Yeah,
was
I think he'd started in that kind of variety in America and then came over early, spent a lot of time in England, and then became a bit of a star in a lot of talking pictures type films in that period, and then sadly died in a car crash.
he did not very long after this. He was in his 30s, wasn't he? The one we have covered on Real Britannia that I would recommend to everybody, it's one of those social problem movies that we like to talk about around about the late 50s, is Pool of London. He's the star of that. He's the
Yeah.
lead in that. And he was in Way to the Stars as well, which you mentioned earlier. But apart from that, because he had a very short life, unfortunately, you know, there isn't a great deal. But the stuff he did, pretty decent stuff, you know. And he's
I think he was going out at the time with Susan Shaw,
oh
who
right,
was
okay, yeah.
a star in the 50s, and it was really his death which I think almost ended her career because
Oh.
she couldn't get over it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, and also Richard Attenborough as well, who this is the first time we're talking about him on Couple Indemnity. And needless to say, he'll be appearing in plenty more episodes, and we'll be talking about him a lot more in big, important films from cinema history, not only as an actor, but as a director as well.
Yeah.
Well, lastly, we'll talk about the directors. So, Powell and Pressburger being our first movie of theirs we've covered on the podcast. So, fascinating to look back on. Michael Powell, the director who'd started in, technically it was actually the silent era in British cinema, and working for established directors in their young career like Hitchcock. And then he became a director himself in the what they call the quota quickies in the 30s, on much more low budget features. Whereas Pressburger was a screenwriter for the most part in German Weimar Republic era in the late 20s and early 30s before, as I said, he went to Paris and then to the UK met Alexander Korda, and then he employed him as a writer for Powell on The Spy in Black in 39, and that's probably when they really hit it off, and they formed the Archers. So then they did Contraband, and they did 49th Parallel in 41 and 42. One of our aircraft is missing, 43, which is a very good film, very good
Yeah.
war movie set in the
Mhm.
Netherlands during the German invasion. And then they really, really went on to far bigger things, and they became a huge thing with Canterbury Tale, Colonel Blimp, and I Know Where I'm Going, The Red Shoes, Black Narcissus. Those ones, I would definitely make a case for that we have to cover all of those
Mm.
on the podcast. Before we did or started Couple Indemnity, we also had watched The Small Back Room, which I was previously talking about on Talking Pictures
Mm.
to you, Scott, and that
Yeah.
is it's remarkable. It's very much more bleak than anything like this. It's very noiry, and it's there's a certain element of despair about it, about this bomb disposal expert who's an alcoholic. But there's some cast members they obviously keep using, like Kathleen Byron, David Farrar, who's in Black Narcissus as well. And it's so interesting. Their careers kind of petered out in the 50s, but Powell obviously did Peeping Tom, which
Effectively killed his career, didn't it?
killed his career, but it's a
Yeah.
fascinating movie to look back on for how shocking it must have been at the time. In the
Yeah.
same year of Psycho.
To predate Psycho just.
Yeah.
Mm.
So naturally, I'll ask both of you, where does A Matter of Life and Death rank in all their movies, the ones that you've watched is?
Ooh. Uh, well, it's funny. This is the only one that I've watched multiple times because I've seen Colonel Blimp, I've seen The Small Back Room, Red Shoes, and what's the other one I've seen? Oh, well, Peeping Tom, but that's not really Archers, is it?
No.
Um, but this is the only one I've seen multiple times, and this was the first of theirs that I saw. So I do have a soft spot for this film, but I was very impressed with the Red Shoes and Colonel Blimp as well. So they would kind of be my top three, I guess.
Where does it sit for you, Scott?
Oh, it's top for me. Closely followed by Black Narcissus, I'd
Mm.
say. I only discovered I Know Where I'm Going about 2, 3 years ago, and that is sort of creeping into my admiration quite a bit. I need to rewatch that because I remember watching that for the first time not so long ago and thinking, oh, why haven't I seen this one before? And there's been a lovely 4K restoration of the Tales of Hoffman that I want to rewatch because I haven't seen that for a long, long time and it's supposed to be really good. So Canterbury Tale always liked as well for some reason. I didn't at first. It took me a couple of viewings of Canterbury Tale to
Mm.
actually get it,
I
but
think Izzy will like Canterbury Tale. Yeah, because it
mm,
does have that a little fantastical element and edge to it.
yeah.
But there's some beautiful on location filming and cinematography
Mhm.
there in black and white, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's filmed in your neck of the woods as well. So
It's actually there's a shot taken in the car park of my sister's pub in Canterbury.
how about
Yeah.
that? For me, this is not the type of movie I would usually gravitate to. Izzy will tell you that fantasy is something I struggle with,
Yeah.
isn't it? But there's something I kind of can't deny about this, about the wonderful kind of mood of this piece, and it's what we talked about. I'm full of admiration to it. I think some of the elements of it verge into the comedy, and I don't want to discredit it by saying it becomes a bit silly in some aspects of it, but I think it's part of its charm. So for me, it's a solid 4 stars, but it comes under the kind of epic magic that Colonel Blimp has. And the Red Shoes, I think, is spellbinding, really, and I think it's an astounding feat. So those two are my top, but then I think this definitely secures its place in number three. Um, and I'm full of admiration for some of the other films like 49th Parallel, that are not talked about enough. There's another film that Michael Powell did in the 30s, which is called The Edge of the World, and it's all filmed in Scotland in the Highlands in the Hebrides, and that is extraordinary. I would definitely recommend that for any listeners who are interested in their filmography. And it's got all of those Scottish cast members like John
John
Laurie.
Laurie. Yes, I was going to say that was just a guess. Yeah. Finley Curry,
Finley
possibly.
Curry. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other one I was going to mention.
I'm
Yeah.
just plucking these out of the
You
air.
can just guess, can't you?
Mm.
But that's another one I would recommend. But there's a great thing you can do and just explore all of their back work and all of the
Yeah.
films that led to this moment,
Like I
especially
said,
Michael Powell.
yeah, my discovery, as I say, was 4 consecutive weeks back in the 80s, and that was it. I was hooked because it was just a wonderful little mini sort of season of their movies that just highlighted the best of, and then it made me want to seek out the rest. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. So for you is you've gone out of five.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know. I feel like this film, like I just have a lot of respect for this film, so I almost feel bad giving it a rating. But we watched it back in 2022, and I just repeated everything that in my notes, just repeated everything I'd said then. But I think that this film is just so clever for the time period that it came out, and I'm still blown away by the visual effects of it all. I just can't understand how they managed to achieve some of the trick shots that they do. It's not a perfect film. It's silly in places, but it's so timely and kind of optimistic. And I really, yeah, I think it is probably my favorite Powell and Pressburger for that reason, because it's got everything, I think. And I think it would be a film that you could, I think if somebody was going to say, oh, I don't watch black and white films, like lots of people my age say, I would say what start with this film because it's got a little bit of both.
Much in the same way that they would still claim that they've seen The Wizard of Oz and grew up on it.
Yeah.
I mean, if they like Wizard of Oz, there's no reason that you can't get engulfed by the romanticism and the escapism of this movie.
Mm, yeah.
For the parallels that we've mentioned.
So a good little gateway, I think,
Absolutely.
for people who maybe struggle watching black and white films or haven't really had someone to show them lots of black and white films. I think this is a perfect kind of entry.
I think my main takeaway from it and why I think it's just so rewatchable is just how original and bold and pioneering it is. And those are really the words full of admiration that you would just automatically tie to Powell and Pressburger for the huge leaps forward they were making in British filmmaking. They weren't sucked into Hollywood or anything. They stood on their own 2 feet and formed the Archers and came up with these hugely original concepts, and worked in some of these fantastic kind of moods mixed in with these wonderful stories of the time. So, and I do love coming back to revisit these wonderful cast cameos in Heaven in this movie as well. So, we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with what's coming up on the podcast. Right, that was a matter of life and death. Wonderful to cover that again, and I loved rewatching it. Yes, as of last night. So Scott, we'd love to have you back on again, and I believe in the turns we're taking, it will be my next selection for you because we've had Rear Window, we've had Paper Moon, and now a matter of life and death. So we'll get onto that in a moment. For our next episode with me and Iz, we will be covering the next Sherlock Holmes episode by Jeremy Brett, The Solitary Cyclist.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to cover that. So my next choice for the three of us, we are going back even further back into the 1930s. It's a fascinating decade to look back on, with the emergence in Hollywood of many of the top directors and actors who went on to bigger things in the golden age. So in this period, as much as I love British cinema, I think in this era, Hollywood films were kind of light years ahead, really. They were far more adventurous with far bigger budgets in terms of where they were going with it. So I have selected my favorite Hollywood film of the 30s that is a comedy.
I think I know.
So I think things are running through people's heads. Now, I can tell you right now, this is not It Happened One Night.
Oh.
That a lot of people.
And I think I know what it is.
Yeah. So it's by a director who we talk a lot about. There's a supporting appearance from an actor who is one of our favorites as well.
No, I'm confused now then. Okay.
Yeah, so we are doing Frank Capra's You Can't Take It With You.
Excellent. Jimmy
Best
Stewart.
Picture winner of 1937,
Yeah.
which I've not heard anyone cover on a podcast before, and I think it deserves as much recognition as it can get because I think it's other than It's Wonderful Life, it's definitely my favorite Frank Capra film, and I think Jean Arthur is wonderful in it. We covered Mr. Smith Goes to Washington
Mm.
last year, so yeah, I can't wait to rewatch that. And I think Izzy would very much enjoy it. So
I've not seen this for years. I saw it 30 years ago plus.
really,
I don't think I ever went back to it.
I love coming back to this one.
Yeah, which is strange for my love for Jimmy Stewart. I should be, and Jean Arthur, as you say, one of the multiple times she plays his wife, isn't it? I think she's one of the actresses that plays his wife about 3 times or something.
Well, it's a fledgling kind of romance with a boyfriend and
Yeah,
girlfriend, but Lionel Barrymore's in it as well
yeah,
as the father, but he's not an evil guy like he is in
mm,
It's a Wonderful Life. So I
yes,
think when you
yes.
know and associate it with Mr. Potter in It's a
Hmm.
Wonderful Life, you'll find it quite how odd and how endearing this particular performance is as a
Yeah,
comparison to It's a Wonderful Life. So I'm really looking forward to that.
excellent, wonderful.
Scott,
Hmm.
your wonderful podcasts. What's been going on those?
Churning them out like nobody's business at the moment, mate. And um, you have thankfully become a regular on the Real Britannia podcast now. You are part of the team, which is great because the dynamic has shifted now from me and Stephen to me,
Yeah.
Stephen, yourself, Mark,
Yeah.
Tony's popping back in again. So we're having this wonderful sort of round table discussions on some great British movies, which, we're doing about two a month now. So we're still churning out the Real Britannias. Stinking Paws had a bit of a revamp. We've lengthened the episodes with lots of other sort of documentary features and things in there. So I'm recording another one of those immediately after talking to you guys. We're going to be doing Death Trap with Michael Caine and Christopher Reeve this afternoon. We've got The Fisher King to come out. And the film I thought you were going to say was your favourite comedy, we're going to be reviewing on Stinking Paws hopefully very soon, which was Night at the Opera,
Oh,
Marx
yes.
Brothers. We're going to cover very, very soon. Rainbow Valley, the 60s documentary, and again, how you are now part of the presenting team on the Talking Pictures TV
Yes,
podcast as
which
well.
I love doing. It's Talking Pictures. We've got a new format
Mm.
on there where we have a round table, don't we? And it's wonderful.
Again, it works. It really works. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much variety that we can talk about on that show. From the wonderful content that channel's churning out. Right, we'll leave it there. So we've been Couple Indemnity, and you can find us on all the good podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, to name a few. Coupleindemnity@gmail.com. We're on X, Blue Sky. We're on YouTube now as well. So thank you so much for joining us again, Scott, for your hat trick appearance.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for turning up, Izzy.
You're welcome.
See you next week for us and a bit of Jeremy Brett and Sherlock Holmes.
Bye, guys.
Bye.